So without further ado, I would like to introduce Ryan Byers. Ryan he's a Colorado native. He was raised on the western slope of Colorado on his family's cattle ranch. After college, he began working in the logging industry, where he was introduced to the transportation industry. Later, he pursued a career in law enforcement. In Ryan's career, he has served as a deputy sheriff and a state trooper for the Colorado State Patrol. During his time with the Colorado State Patrol, Ryan was promoted into the motor carrier safety section, where he completed enforcement roadside inspections and compliance investigations on companies based in Colorado. He was later assigned as the motor carrier safety training coordinator and became a master instructor for the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration's National Training Center. His knowledge was key in the development of the federal training programs regarding commercial motor vehicle safety and compliance. After CSA was implemented in 2010, Ryan witnessed the profound impact the new compliance, safety, and accountability program was having on motor carriers throughout the nation. And in 2002, he formed Front Range Compliance Services. Since then, Ryan and his team have worked with thousands of companies throughout the United States to improve their D.O.T. safety and compliance programs. He is considered one of the foremost experts in D.O.T. rules, compliance, and safety programs. Currently, Ryan is the chairman for the Colorado Safety Council and founder of the new D.O.T. University. Ryan has been a partner with Flood and Peterson for a number of years, and I can't speak highly enough to his expertise in this area. And we are just so thankful to have him here to present today. So without further ado, Ryan, thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you, Allison. I really appreciate it. All right. Good morning, everybody. We've got a lot of information we're going to go through. So today, the topics that we're going to be getting into and talking about, each of these are topics that I could probably spend the entire time with you on. So we decided to try to really cut this down, get to the basic information. I do want to just kind of go over real quick. I'm going to break away from this PowerPoint really quick. That's if I'm smart enough to figure it out here. I want to break away from this and just kind of run through the handouts that we do have for you in here. So the first one that you're going to be getting is the Intrastate Commercial Motor Vehicle. This is going to be, do the DOT regulations apply to us? And I think I said intrastate. This is the interstate, if you're crossing state lines, just a flow chart. Because as I'm going through this, when I'm referring to commercial motor vehicles, if you've heard me speak before, I always try to reference, what vehicles, because that's still, every time I'm going in companies today, that is still a problem. People are not, applying the DOT regulations to their fleet as they should. So this flow chart hopefully will help clear up some of that stuff. I also have the flow chart included for Colorado rules. What is applicable for Colorado? I do make reference, in this big DOT compliance box, what is required in there. So again, there is differences, Colorado to interstate, just some things that one needs to know in that area. Now, I also threw in the CDL. When is a CDL flow chart? Because again, we have commercial motor vehicles that are non-CDL, and then when CDLs kick in, and I always get questions on that, so I just wanted to pass that one out. I also included basically it's the form letter for the consent, the query for completing your queries. This is the document that you need to have signed by each of your employees. It's good for the term of their employment with you, but you do need to have this and maintain it, either within their drug and alcohol testing file, or you want to make sure that you have this form in the driver file. Wherever it's at, just be consistent, throughout your whole program. I also included the fact sheets from the FMCSA regarding the updates from September. We're going to talk a little bit about that. It's been about 6 months, so I think everybody's starting to get the hang of it, but I am here just to kind of go over some of the things and kind of talk about some of the problems that we're still seeing today with this. There's also they call this their visor card. It's just just a summary, 2-page summary of what their hours of service is. I also threw in my flow charts, things that I use to train on short haul. These are the revised flow charts. So if you've got one of my previous editions, this is, again, we updated it with the new regulations. And I'll go a little bit more into that within the presentation. I also have the non-CDL flow chart that's going to be coming to you from Allison. Again, this is going to be, and nothing really changed in that, but I did do some updates to that. I think the biggest thing that I added is that I kind of always kept it a secret before, but that was the 16-hour day. I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then this is an example of a time record. We reference time records quite a bit. So I'm just going to send you just an example of a time record and kind of the reasons that I have it set up the way we do. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump back into this PowerPoint. Now, I will be kind of going through and asking some questions, as we're going through that. The panelist questions were supposed to be set up for a, basically a multiple choice or a way to vote on your answer. And I wrote open-ended questions for Allison, so that was my bad. So it's no big deal. I'm just going to ask you the questions whenever we come to these. So these slides that I have marked with the S2, meaning slide 2, I do have a question for you. What I would like is if you can just, as I ask a question, or if you have any questions, we're going through this, please type that into the chat bar. And then, I'll try to monitor as I'm going through. And Allison will also be monitoring. So she'll, if a question comes in, she'll make sure to let me know so that we can get that answered. It's really important. I want to make sure that you guys are getting your questions answered. What I found from all the time I've spent teaching it is if you're thinking of a question, it's very likely that somebody else is thinking of that exact same question. So getting it out there is going to not just help you, but it's also going to help the whole group. So like I said, please don't be afraid to participate. If you want to hold your questions to the end, I would like to, we'll try to open it up for a little bit more questions and that as we get toward the back. So what I suggest is write your questions down so you don't forget them, because we'll get onto some other topics, other talking points. As chances are you're going to forget that. So please make sure you write your questions down so we can get everything answered. And I do have an open door policy. If you have questions afterwards, you just want to reach out to me directly, I would be happy to talk to you and see if I can help you out. Okay, from there, we're going to jump into the topics of today. We're going to be talking about the FMCSA Clearinghouse implementation, from 2020. How's it going, where everybody is at with that. We're also going to talk about some of the hours of service, the rule changes, how we're using that. And some of that, I'm going to focus a little bit heavier on short haul, because that one is probably one of the most profound, effects of the entire rule change. Of course, there are some good news throughout the other ones. I'm going to get into the FMCSA audits, how COVID 2019, how it's changed the program, what to expect, and how to prepare for those if you do have a D.O.T. audit coming up within that area. And then, of course, we'll try to go to questions and answers. I'm not exactly sure if we can unmute everybody for open questions. I'll let Allison figure that one out, or you can type in your questions. Throw your questions at me. Any regulatory D.O.T. topic, of course, we'll go from there. So I'd like to throw out a question. In 2020, I should say 2021, now that we're kind of coming through the toward the end of the pandemic, I hope, and things are starting to get back to normal. What are some of your greatest challenges for 2021 regarding your D.O.T. program? So go ahead and throw that in there, or throw in your answers, your comments into the chat. We'll see what we've got here. Okay.
Got one recruiting.
Yeah. So we've got recruiting. Dennis, thank you for that one. Recruiting is tough. There's, it's always hard to find your drivers, to get the newer drivers in. It seems like, with the new regulations, especially with in 2022, they're going to be coming out with what they call the ELDT, the entry level driver training program. I expect that's going to pose a bit of a problem in trying to get some new drivers in because of the training. So Josh, entry level driver training with that program coming in. If you don't know what that is, that's going to be the new program is going to be required, in class training, behind the wheel training. Currently, right now, entry level driver training is a pretty simple program, but the upcoming one is definitely going to pose some challenges because the instructors have to be qualified and registered. So Ron put up using drivers in multiple positions and tasks, keeping up with the rules. Yeah, absolutely. And especially when we take that, Ron, and we throw that into, the state's changes to the regulations in 2017, when they changed that gross vehicle weight rating. Now you've got drivers that could be driving a regulated vehicle, could not be driving a regulated vehicle, and it changes maybe throughout the day, throughout the week. So OSHA is making a comeback. Yeah, probably, but or OSA. Dennis might have to clarify. I'm not picking that one up. All right, let's go ahead and move on from there. Sleep apnea. Yeah. Okay. All right, Dennis, thank you for that. We're going to go ahead and move on. If I can get my slides to change here. Okay, jumping into the FMCSA Clearinghouse, we'll be talking about registration queries. Hopefully everybody was able to go through and get their registrations done and completed. We are still finding, as we're going into companies, that are reaching out for help and we're trying to set up their programs, that there's still a lot of them that have not even registered, have not even completed a query. I was in March, we had 6 actual official D.O.T. audits on companies. 3 of them were existing clients, and 3 of them were actual clients that came to us for help. When we presented the FMCSA Clearinghouse information during that audit, the auditor said that it was the first time that they had actually seen the documents, so, they had made several comments that it was nice to actually see what those documents were. So today I'm going to be talking about, the program since it was implemented on January 6th of 2020. Last year, we're going to be talking about, this is for CDL drivers. We're going to go into the registration policy procedures, completing your queries, and of course, third-party compliance, and then, if we have any questions. So with there, number one, what was the clearinghouse? That whole program, it was proposed to provide this database. And the reason is to track drivers, because a driver could very easily hide from a positive test. If you had a positive test with that driver and you terminated that driver and they went somewhere else, they can manipulate their employment history. They can manipulate, their dates of hire, and they could try to create either a gap or extend things. And it became almost impossible to find. So then that driver would continue to just go employee to employer. And then, eventually maybe they'd get caught, maybe they wouldn't. We also run into situations where one of your employees hasn't been selected for a random test. You haven't picked up on a reasonable suspicion reason, but maybe they're looking for employment. And during that time, they have a pre-employment somewhere else for another company, and it comes back positive. Well, it's no harm, no foul on that driver, because that driver still is employed by you. The other company doesn't hire them. They come back to work for you. And then next thing you know, you're utilizing a positive tested driver. So the whole purpose of this database is to keep and maintain all those statistics. It was pretty interesting when you get into the clearinghouse, you can actually look up the statistics, for 2020 year for the testing. The number one test, positive test, was for marijuana, and then stimulants followed shortly after that. I think one of the surprising things that I actually came across, or that I saw, was the test. There was like 156 positive tests for PCP. So imagine having that driver working for you, so there are definitely a few situations out there. And again, all that information is good to take to your drivers for education and awareness. We're also going to, we talk about the records maintenance within the clearinghouse. Those records within that clearinghouse are going to follow that driver for 5 years. Okay. No matter how many times they change employers, or if they update and change their CDL. These records are designed to follow that driver, to force them either out of the driving role so that they're no longer safety sensitive, or to make sure that any employers that are hiring them are aware of their program. So the FMCSA Clearinghouse registration, okay, if you have not registered, or if this is new to you, or you're looking at registering, you can go to the clearinghouse, fmcsa.dot.gov. That'll take you to the page. I clicked on register. I wrote register in there, but every page in the clearinghouse has the big registration button in that. So I'll go ahead and just click on that, just to kind of give you an idea what that looks like. Now, this page is kind of cool with the register. because it goes through and it talks about the requirements for the drivers and a good little drop down menu. So there's some educational points there. It talks about what to do as an employer, and we kind of minimize that for you. It just kind of gives you some points, just dropping down through that whole program, and then it takes you down through, of course, the rest of the information. Of course, to register, it's really simple. Just click on register over here. If you have CDL drivers and you have not registered yet, you do need to get into that program. So let me see if I can come back to the presentation here. Okay. All right. So from there, like I said earlier, each employee or employer of CDL drivers must register. Looks like I got a typo there. I just found. Okay. Each CDL driver must register and validate their CDL. If you've had situations where drivers have tried to register, but it's not validating their driver's license, or if you've tried to run somebody and they claim that they're registered, but you're just not getting any record, it's a possibility that driver entered their driver's license wrong, and they need to go back in and correct their registration to get validated. The biggest thing that causes that is the drivers here in Colorado, they put the dashes in with their driver's license number. So if they just put the numbers, usually it will go through and accept the number. Okay. Now, no CDL driver can be considered for employment unless they're registered with the FMCSA Clearinghouse. If they have not registered now, you cannot employ them. So that's got to be, if you haven't adjusted your hiring steps, for step in those initial, when somebody walks in your office, says, hey, I'd like to get a job with you. Somewhere in that initial conversation is when you've got to pose that question: are you registered in the clearinghouse? And then you're going to do that pre-employment query to see if that driver has an option or has been in there. Now let's go ahead and let me throw a question out there for you. Please answer in the chat. Do you or are you requiring your current drivers or drivers that were employed prior to the start of the implementation to register in the FMCSA Clearinghouse? It seems that, I get a plethora of, responses on that. People don't have their drivers registered and that type of thing. So we want to make sure, again, I think it's a good idea for everybody to get registered because what kind of happens is, we've all seen the FMCSA make mistakes with their database. We've seen MVRs, the Colorado Department of Revenue. I've seen them go through and make mistakes on their MVRs, whether, an individual gets a new license or gets a suspension corrected, or maybe they were mistakenly suspended, and the state leaves it in that record. So, because companies or because the federal and state agencies do make mistakes with their data, potentially a record could get put onto a driver inappropriately. I mean, think about your data queues. One of the most common data queues out there is the wrong carrier. So this is kind of one of those areas too, where it's a good idea to have, your current employees registered so that they're aware and notified more easily if a situation or if something gets entered onto their program or onto their driving record for that, so they can get it cleared up before the company goes through and finds that. So it's a good idea. So thank you for those who have responded. As you hire, remember, as you go through and you hire new drivers after the clearinghouse. Oh, I clicked on the wrong thing there, guys. After you go through and get those drivers, employed by you now, they have to be registered though. So with the clearinghouse, we talk a little bit about the employer responsibilities. The first one is registering and maintaining your account. So you as the FMCSA manager for your clearinghouse, you've got to administer the management roles. You could do that through the portal. I know there's been a lot of back and forth on the portal account. I believe that it's working a little bit better if you were able to get that. Some companies had to just dump the portal account, go back and re-register for the FMCSA Clearinghouse. It was a nightmare again for the first part of 2020, but I think everything has pretty much balanced out. Now, as the driver, it's going to be imperative for the drivers, their license numbers now. One of the big changes with the Clearinghouse is now that the driver's license number and the driver's name and state of issuance has to be issued, of course, to your service agents. So your TPAs need to be aware of that. It's got to be entered on their drug and alcohol testing or the control and custody forms, so that again, that information can be entered, because the MRO on their side, as they find positive tests, or maybe they find a dilute or whatever the case could be, a refusal on the MRO side, they're going to go through and do the reporting. And so to do that, they have to have the driver's license information. The data entered into the clearinghouse is always identified by the driver and their information. So the queries that we're going to get into, we've got the pre-employment query. Again, before you hire them, you have to complete this pre-employment query. Now, ultimately, this query will ultimately eliminate part of your safety performance history investigation. So as part of that investigation, when you hire somebody, you send the last 3 years of previous employers that list and that form to fill out, and you get the responses back. And part one of that form is typically, did this employee work for you? What were their employment dates? What kind of equipment did they operate? And did they have any accidents? In a nutshell, that's kind of that first one. The second part of that query is, were they in your drug and alcohol testing program? Did they refuse a test, fail a test, and so on and so forth? Now that form right now is still active. We still have to be using that all the way to 2023, but ultimately, after 3 years of the implementation date of the FMCSA Clearinghouse, we will be replacing that form with this. So make sure that right now that you're still doing both of those partial investigations, the clearinghouse and the safety performance history for the drug and alcohol testing records. So prior drug and alcohol record checks are going to be available. Again, I just got through talking about that until 2023. You have to do both of those situations. The clearinghouse, the full query, driver applicants, prior to the drug and alcohol records, again, beginning 2020, you have to do now this full query on everybody. It cannot be obviously a limited query. The driver applicant has got to register now in order to execute the specific consent for the clearinghouse. So basically what happens if you have not run one of these is you will request a query on said driver. The driver then will log into their account. They'll be notified that you have requested a query, and then they can authorize that specific query. If that driver happens to refuse, or they have not registered for the clearinghouse, they can't even be considered for employment. So in audits, what's happening with those is the D.O.T officers, they're taking that almost as serious as a refusal to test. So again, make sure that you are for sure checking to make sure that they're in there. Now, the consent for those full queries, it's only single use. It's that one time, that pre-employment query. At the time of hire, you can run it once. If you want to do a full query again, that employee does have to log into their account and give you access to the full query. Now, the annual queries, the limited queries, that's going to be the one that you can do kind of as you're going down or through the program. So with the annual query, number one, beginning the calendar year 2020, that's when the program started. It was January 6th, 2020. And it says that employers must conduct that query of the database of all drivers, all CDL drivers that you have in there. So the timing of that query, with the employees, it's just got to be once. You're not limited. You can run it as often as you want, but sometime in that 365-day period from the beginning, January 6, 2020, you are required to run your first limited query. Now, as the employer, again, you can conduct as many queries as you want. You'll see on one of my next slides here that they're $1.25 a piece. So you can do multiple queries throughout the year. You're not limited to just one, but what I'm seeing is most companies right now are doing it their one time to satisfy and fulfill that requirement. Now, driver's consent is still required for the limited query, and that's where that form comes in that I had presented or to you earlier, and that Allison will be sending out. That is a form letter that you can adopt for your company, have that driver sign it. It's good for the term of their employment with your company until you either they separate employment or you terminate their employment. Now, driver's consent's required. Again, if they don't give consent, then they have to be removed from that safety sensitive function. The annual query can either be a limited or a full. So I do get this question quite often. There, wouldn't it be better just to do a full query? And the answer is absolutely not. Just because of the work that has to go into a full query, because remember, it's a one-time single use, and it's you don't necessarily need it if they don't have any information or if they don't have a violation or something on their record, then you're not going to need it. Now, if you clearly know that so-and-so has a record and you're going to have to get the full query to get the information, then then plan ahead and do that full query on them. Remember, if you do your whole team as full queries, then it's like herding cats. You got to run around, get all of them to go through and log into their system and grant you access for you to get them. Whereas the limited query, you can run that clean shot of limited queries, and then you're going to be good to go. Now, the limited query is going to show the data, that has been reported on the driver. It's just going to tell you if there is data reported on their driver. And then, if it says that there's a violation or a prohibition, then, within 24 hours, you've got to run that other record. The other thing that happens in that 24 hours is you don't, if it comes back, if you run in your limited queries and it comes back with a record on somebody, you don't just have to call them and say, pull over, we're sending somebody out. You do have 24 hours to remove them from safety sensitive functions. So, you can plan ahead, depending where they're at. If you've got a truck somewhere on the other side of the nation, you can try to figure out, hey, where's the best point to get them so that we can get them out of the truck or maybe send somebody else. If you're local, you can finish the day, bring that driver in, say, hey, what's going on? And then kind of proceed from there. Okay. Now, if you're running your limited queries, I didn't back up. I did have a question back there I wanted to ask you. So go ahead and answer in the chats for me. When is the deadline to run your first annual query, that first limited query? When were we supposed to have that done? So I didn't give you the actual date in there, but I definitely described that. And what I'm seeing is, there's a lot of individuals that haven't run a single query. And, I'm not, these questions aren't designed to throw you under the bus. If you don't know, it's cool. But, again, for discussion, this is definitely a no judgment zone. So I've got Dennis threw in there the 6th of January, 2021. Dennis, I'm going to correct you on there. You were really close with, it was the 5th of January. So we had January 6th, 2020 when it started. January 5th was the last day. So that's when your quarters were going to be done. And Amy put in there within 365 days from the last query. That's a good answer. I'll take that. So once a year, Josh, perfect. Dennis typo. Oh, sure it was Dennis. All right. All right. Thanks everybody. So with that, we're going to throw in there one of the questions that I get that's super important. It's, like people will call me up and say, Ryan, we missed our queries. What do we do? I will tell you this. Get them done ASAP. If you missed it, you missed it. Right now, the enforcement officers, they're not being too harsh if you miss that date, as long as you get it done. In the future, they're going to be pretty strict on this one because it is going to be a critical violation. So you want to make sure if you missed it or if you haven't got your clearinghouse set up, just make sure that you're getting going on that, as quickly and as soon as possible. All right. So from there, let's talk about those limited queries. They're $1.25. You can do unlimited pools on those. The employer may conduct limited queries, for the annual query requirement. That's obviously a given. Limited queries can be, written and maintained by the employer. When you do run your queries, I will tell you this. I know when you read the regulation, it's kind of iffy on how they worded that. One of the things that they said when we're talking about the maintenance of the reports, it says that you can maintain a copy or the FMCSA, your account can maintain a copy. Not a big fan of letting the FMCSA maintain that copy. So most definitely, best of habit is to make sure you maintain. I do the electronic copy of the PDF. You'll see my file formats kind of here in a little bit of how we might save, one of those queries, but most definitely maintain your copies to show that you have done that work. One of the things, I know it's supposed to stay in there per company, but again, the FMCSA Clearinghouse site has had enough problems. I just don't trust it. If we change who the DER, who's accessing it, potentially, I'm afraid that we might lose some records. So the forms for the consent, I have attached that for you, so y'all can be getting that to use it. The FMCSA did provide a sample also within their area. Now, that form can be combined with all your other consents. So if you want to take the text out of the body of the form that I sent, you can most definitely, attach that to some of your other documents that you have the individual complete at the time of hiring. So you can again, combine that with some other documents. It can be for multi-year, which is, the one that I provided you is good for the full term of their employment. And then the consent for limited query is not a consent for the actual results. So what that means is it's just going to tell you their thumbs up or thumbs down. If it's thumbs down, then you have to follow up, within that 24 hours to get that full query completed. A full query is also $1.25. Okay, it's a one-time e-consent, electronic consent completed by the drivers. It has to be done anytime there's a pre-employment, and then it has to be completed anytime a limited query comes back with a prohibition or violation. Now, the full query consent must be completed electronically. I kind of already talked about that. And the consent for that full query, it will give you the actual information regarding the testing, the violation. What it could go through and show on an individual may be, where they're at in the testing process. It could say that they've had the positive. It could show you that they've had the SAP evaluation and the substance abuse professional has uploaded that information. It could show you that there was a negative return to duty test. And that's something that you as the employer would upload, if there's a negative, if you've done the return to duty test. And then it could show you that they're, if they've had that return to duty test, then that individual is in their follow-up testing sequence, which could be anywhere from 1 year of testing to 5 years of testing, depending on the substance abuse professional. And then at the completion of that test, when we get into the reporting requirements, that information will be uploaded. So when you're doing your queries, you're going to be able to see where that driver applicant is at, or if you're existing employee, you'll see where they're at within that process to pick up and carry on. So completing queries, your TPAs can do that for you. The biggest thing that I've got to stress is you need to make sure that you know what the TPA is doing and know what their roles and responsibilities and what your roles and responsibilities. Okay. I'm running into this all the time where it's like, no, our TPA is doing all of this, and the TPA is not. They're only running limited queries, but they're not doing the pre-employment queries or vice versa. So make sure that you get with your CTPAs, that's your third-party drug and alcohol programs. Make sure you get with them and find out exactly what they have going on within their program. A lot of them are stepping away and not doing anything with Clearinghouse. There's a lot of companies that thought their TPA got them registered, got everything going, and don't just assume that's going to be done. Now, your service provider does have to be registered within the FMCSA program. Just because they're registered does not mean that they're actively doing it, because we've seen this go both ways. So when you register in your account, you'll activate, or select which TPA you have. If you change service providers, make sure that you log into your FMCSA Clearinghouse and update who your new TPA service is. Now, the Clearinghouse will go through and it's going to upload, multiple drivers for a query. You can do them in batches. That feature is available now. You have to go through and build it into spreadsheets. From talking with my staff, as we're going through and running them, it's one of those things that takes time to set up the queries. I'm sure if you were a huge organization, that would be, get that batch done. But you got to weigh that that spreadsheet, you always got to be removing the individuals off. We've also run into situations where we've done a batch upload where we don't get a record back, but that's we got no record because they didn't like how it was entered on a spreadsheet. So again, it's just challenging. So far, we've seen it take about the same amount of time to just go through and enter each driver individually. But you do, however, makes you comfortable. So right now it is available. I did put in development, but they did release that. So it is available for you. The clearinghouse will not support like an employer interface for automatic uploads. So we'll see what the future brings for that. So reporting violations. So as you have drivers that test positive, your MRO is going to do a lot of that reporting for you. The first thing that you have to make sure that you're reporting on is an alcohol positive, a 0.04 or greater, okay, a negative return to duty test, as that, when the driver comes back, if you're keeping them, they went through the SAP evaluation, the SAP will evaluate or upload their pass of the treatment program, and then you will enter in the negative return to duty test. The other thing is the alcohol and drug refusals, not determined by the MRO. So sometimes it turns into a refusal on the backside, things that happen at collection sites and then it gets sent off to the MRO. And other times you have where drivers just flat out tell you, I'm not going to go take a test. You're going to report those types of refusals. Actual knowledge of violations such as pre-duty drug and alcohol, either misuse or use. Completing the required follow-up tests, as you're not going to report on every follow-up test that's completed, but make sure that you complete, the final when they're done and they've satisfied all the follow-up testing, you're going to report that has been done. Okay. Now the rule details documentations for the violations. Remember, you can't just report a violation. You have to upload information, affidavits, your reports, like reasonable suspicion documents and everything else. So make sure that you're ready to go to upload all that. And it's got to be done within 3 business days. Now, registered appointments for the TPA. Okay. We want to make sure that, Part 382 violation, your TPA, may also, I guess what I'm trying to say, sorry, I got tongue tied there. Your TPA can also do your reporting for you. But again, communication with them, make sure you know exactly what your TPA is going to be doing. Okay, a couple more topics here for the employer responsibilities. The first one, update your drug and alcohol policies. So remember, when it comes to your drug and alcohol policies, we've had a couple recent updates that have to happen. The end of 2018 going into 2019, we had the whole opioids, opiates, that kind of thing. So opioids is the update, plus we had to, add in, some language regarding, a use of a prescription and that kind of thing. So we had the 2018, 2019 update. In 2020, we had the update to the FMCSA Clearinghouse. So we'll want to make sure that you do have that policy in there. Now, as part of putting that clearinghouse in there, you're also required to make sure that your drivers receive copies of those policy updates and you have them sign, and make sure you put that within your record. Other employer responsibilities that we're going to be running into: the employer must notify all drivers of the violations that will be reported. We say you want to make sure you did just a little bit of training on them, at least 30 days from the implementation of your program. So if you haven't started your clearinghouse, just plan on doing that. It doesn't have to be a big, huge event. Just have a documented training that you go through, you explain what the clearinghouse requirements are, to give them all heads up. It's supposed to be at least 30 days prior to the implementation of your program. Now, specific documentation, statements, and things like that, affidavits, you want to make sure that you're prepared, that you have those things ready to fill out in case you have a violation, so that you can get those completed and uploaded within that 3-day period to the FMCSA Clearinghouse. Now I'm going to get ready to move on to hours of service. Just want to ask everybody if they have any questions regarding the FMCSA Clearinghouse. I know some of you have been probably to multiple trainings. This has been drilled into your head. But the one thing that I've been seeing for sure is a lot of people don't have that information because, we just see time and time again that we're missing some of that. So yes, I do have a copy of this slideshow for you, and we will make sure, Allison will make sure that everybody gets a copy of that out to you. So perfect. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and jump into hours of service. So So 2021, well, we can go back. I guess it was June of 2020. The FMCSA came out and said, "Hey, we've announced the rule changes or to the hours of service." And beginning of summer, companies all started switching over because there's this great big rule thing, and everybody's like, wait. They did a really bad job, how they worded that, because it looked like it was live. But when you read the whole article, we had 90 days before it was going to go live. So it was like, hold up. So on September 29th, the new hours of service update came into place. And so what we got an update to the short haul for CDL drivers. We got an update on adverse conditions. We got a 30-minute rest break, and of course the sleeper berth provision update. All changes from going back to the rule changes in 2005, and then of course the 30-minute rest break, that was a 2013 update. So some big changes, pretty exciting stuff in my mind's happened. Well, here we are now, 6 months later down the road. How is it going? It's just kind of one of those situations that it's been I think a really good thing. I know I was pretty excited about it. So the first one, the hours of service update, I'm going to spend just a little bit of time on that. This update specifically, whoops, I apologize, I clicked too soon there. Okay, so this update specifically, was pretty huge. With this one, we went through and we had a couple time changes. The first one, that we would have is, number one, is right here, this 14-hour day. It was always 12. In 2005, that rule, it said that you could only have a 12-hour day. I think it was even in there a little bit before that. It has always been, a 12-hour day, which made it extremely difficult to use. And that's where we saw that a lot of companies were really struggling with that. So again, they went through and they mirrored the CDL or the non-CDL short haul, and they extended the day from 14. Additionally, they changed it from 100 air mile radius to 150 air miles. Everything else is exactly the same, but those two situations there, the 14 and 150 air miles, those are absolutely critical and super important. So again, drivers, they still have to remain local. That's kind of the biggest thing. So one of the things is I updated, my short haul, my local drivers flow chart. Again, Allison will be sending this out to everybody. And this flow chart is kind of designed it's an everyday situation. One of the questions I get is, well, Ryan, what if our driver, goes out to a different state and they're going to be working there for the next couple of weeks? The short haul moves with them, so that big bubble, that 150 air mile radius, it moves with them to their new location, and then they would apply this flow chart every day. So how this flow chart goes through and works is, number one, do you keep a daily time record? Now, I want to make special note right here, salary employees included. Okay, I still constantly run into this, and this is actually, when you read 395.1E, the regulation on this, it specifically says this at the very end of the short haul provision. Okay, and nobody reads the entire regulation, so this part gets skipped a lot. So I took it and I made it the first part of the regulation, because here's the deal: if I come and I ask you a question, do you have a time record, and you say no, or you don't have an adequate time record, we're just going to end it. We don't need to worry about the rest of the questions. We're just going to go straight down to the bottom of this flow chart that says, hey, you have to have an actual logbook or an ELD. Now, over here on the side of this chart, I did go through and I've added this in for you. It talks about the time card, the time record requirement, what it absolutely has to show. First thing, it's got to show your daily times right here. It's got to show the time that the driver starts their shift, the time that the driver ends their shift, and the total time. I'm still running into situations where companies are saying, hey, here's the deal. We just showed our time card. Today it was 8 hours. Yesterday it was 7 hours. The next day it was 10 hours. Okay, that's not good enough. You have to have start, stop, and total from there. You go through this flow chart. It's pretty simple. Do you have a time card? Yes. Okay, next thing, do you stay within 150 miles from the 150 from the air miles from your work reporting location? You can answer yes to that. Are you released off duty within 14 hours at that work reporting location? So this is important. You got to start at the one place and you have to stop at the same place. So you always have to go back and forth. You stop at a different location, you don't qualify for this, even if it's within the same town. Okay, so you absolutely have to start and stop at the same work reporting location. Okay, and then once we answer yes to both of those, it's going to make sure you're taking 10 hours off, and then no logbooks required, but we still have to have this lovely time card right here. Okay, so the next thing is if you do answer no, or I'm sorry, yes to any of these questions, basically what's going to happen is it's going to drop you over here down to this, and it says that you either have to have a record of duty status or an ELD. Okay, remember records of duty status. Okay, everybody, this should be grilled into everybody's head by now. You can do up to 8 paper logs in a 30-day period, not in a month. That's the 1st through the 30th, the 2nd through the 31st. That's a rolling track. Okay, of those 30 days, you're allowed to have up to 8 of these per driver. Now, some other rules that kind of need to just be aware of. First off, that 30-minute break, it does not apply to short haul operations unless they lose that exception and they have to fill out a log or an ELD. So it's really important that you made notes on that if it happened to apply to you. Okay, I'm going to get into the changes on the 30-minute break here in just a minute. You have the 60 and 70-hour rule. Okay, a lot of people took this new rule and they're like, oh, we don't have to comply with the 60 or 70-hour rule. Look, we just have to, we get 14-hour days, we're good to go. No, no, no. 60 and 70-hour rule still applies to you. Now, you have to know that. So I do have some specific notes down here. And you do have to declare which rule you're on. Remember, 70-hour rules for companies that work every day of the week, 60-hour rules for those other companies who take a day off or take the weekend off. Okay. I do have the note in here about the property carrier exception. Again, that property carrier exception that is for local drivers. And then the next thing would be the ELD. Now, if you do carry property carrier, again, that's longer than 16 hours or longer than 14 hours. So you would have to do a time record for that. Now, one of the updates that we had in this is the 150 air mile radius. So just to kind of give you an idea what that looks like, this inner circle right here, this was going to be the, of course, the 100 air mile radius. It has been expanded now to this 150 air mile radius. So this is an example coming out of Greeley, Colorado. So if we kind of dig a little bit deeper into that, to kind of expand that map, you can see that extension. We go Greeley north, and that would take us just to Glendo, right in that area. If we go down here to the east, you can see the corner of the state of Colorado. It kind of extends just past that area. If we go to Greeley west, you can see out here going across Highway 40, we're just almost to Craig. So that's a pretty big radius. And I will just go ahead and show you, Greeley south there, just kind of looking down to the south. It did expand, if I was leaving Greeley, it did expand down here just a little bit past Pueblo. So again, just some good information that we have there for you. So a quick question I have here for you to ask, would it be helpful if you knew how to go through and make those air mile radius maps? It used to be super simple. There was software. I used to use Microsoft Streets and Trips, and then they no longer supported that software. Google Maps doesn't necessarily do that. I will tell you this: there is a YouTube channel out there called D.O.T. University that put out a pretty good video right here at bit.ly, AMR air mile radius -map. So again, I will go through and show you how to make those maps. If you go through down and check out that video, it's actually super easy. And it's really impresses DOT auditors when they come in, or if they're looking at your terminals and you have those maps set up for every terminal or every location. Maybe you're taking on a new job and you're pulling up those maps. It's going to make you guys look, like you're really on the ball. Okay. So some bonus information, just really quick. Let me check my time.
Ryan, can I interrupt you just a moment? We did get one question.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Can your radius map change from Yard to Durango as an example for the 150 mile radius once they're at the hotel? Does that map change if?
Yep.
the overnight.
I got it. I got it here. So great question. So yes, I mentioned or I alluded to that earlier. Your radius moves with you. So if you travel, let's say you just take travel time, Dennis, and you go. Remember, you're permitted to show that travel time as off duty. Okay, as long as when you arrive at your location, that driver is afforded 10 hours off. So you can show all of that time off duty. So maybe I woke up in Denver today. I worked today. Overnight, I traveled to Durango. If they get their time off when they're in Durango, then yes, you can declare that. Again, just if it's travel time, however they get there. So you do have that one exception there. But if you're doing it in the situation where they're driving a commercial motor vehicle to Durango, then when they start their shift on Monday, okay, and they're going to Durango, they'll have to complete a record of duty status, one of these little guys at that time. Let me just kind of get to that screen here, and so you just kind of see it. So they'll do this record of duty status. Then, once they're in Durango at that particular point, the next day their 150 air mile radius has now moved with them. So as they work from the hotel, that will become their new work reporting location. Okay, and then that individual can then start and stop their shift at that location while they're in Durango, and they can do the time record. When they come back on Friday, the individual will go through and they will have their time on Friday, and that time will have to be again on a record of duty status. So again, that point to you that you brought would be a 2 logbook week, Dennis. I would have the logbook on Monday, a logbook on Friday, and then my entire time, in Durango would all be short haul operations. So hopefully that answered your question. Again, it can move with you. I've had drivers that have left Colorado, went out to Pennsylvania, utilizing this exception, and they're driving back. Now, remember, when you're driving, you're only required to present the records of duty status for your days that you're required to have them. Okay, so one of my clients got stopped in Kansas, and the Kansas trooper was getting ready to shut him down for not having a day in the previous 7. He only had 2 days. It's a 2-day drive back from Pennsylvania. He'd been out there for 2 weeks, and he calls me. He says, "Hey, Ryan, you lied to me. This trooper's getting ready to put me down, put me out of service." I said, "Get the trooper on the phone with me." I explained the short haul to him. He was not familiar with it. He was like, "There's no way you can claim short haul from Pennsylvania to Colorado." I was like, "He's not claiming short haul from Pennsylvania to Colorado. He was short haul when he was in Pennsylvania. His drive back, he's got the logs. After he checked with his supervisor, he let the guy go. The officer wasn't even aware that you could do that. So you want to make sure that you're educating your drivers, because if they get pulled over and then somebody asks them that question, they're going to say, "Well, I don't know." They very well could get themselves in hot water. So, okay, so just really quick on this one. Hopefully that answered. Dennis, I did see that you put down map developers. If you were to check out my YouTube video, that's who I use too, buddy. So thanks for that. All right, so non-CDL drivers, again, this rule didn't change. The biggest mistake that we make, again, within these situations is going to be the actual time record. Drivers are not, or companies aren't requiring drivers to keep the adequate time record. So again, I can't stress enough, please make sure that you are utilizing the proper time records within the records of duty status. Okay, I'm going to move to the next slides here. This is an example of a time record that I like to use to make sure that, companies, are gathering the correct information. So one of the phenomenons that we had happen in 2017 with the DOT rules was Colorado decided to become one of those oddball states. There's 3 of them in the nation that have oddball numbers. So we got 27 states in the nation say, hey, for intrastate commerce, commercial motor vehicles start at 26,001 pounds. And then there are 20 states that say, hey, you know what, here's the deal. We're 10,001 states, and Colorado used to be one of those. And now there are 3 states, in the union that say, hey, we have an oddball gross vehicle weight rating. Well, Colorado's one of them. They say it's not 10, not 26, 16,001. Okay, that sounds great until you start applying some hours of service in different scenarios, it can really change the game. So you are going to have guys that are some days driving commercial vehicles, which are regulated, and you have some days that they're driving, but they're not regulated. They're still on duty, and you have to report those. So, today, maybe I'm just driving a Ford F-150 or a Ford F-250, or even a 350 with a gross vehicle weight rating of 14,000 pounds, and I just stay in Colorado. That's a non-regulated day. Remember, it's only a violation of hours of service when the driver's in the act of driving. So in that scenario, it's important that you are able to note and make, keep some type of documented evidence that a driver wasn't regulated on specific days. So with that, I went through and I added on our daily time record. Remember, you're only required to have the date, the driver's name, obviously, right? But the date, the start time, the end time, and the total hours. So good information to also have, so you can go through and say, because it's presumed that the driver is driving every day, right? So it's going to be up to you to show if they are or they not. So I went through and I added, okay, these unit numbers. Because if I'm not driving, I'm not regulated on that day. Yes, my overall week is still ticking off for the 60 and the 70-hour rule. But having these unit numbers associated with your time record is absolutely critical if you have drivers going back between regulated vehicles and non-regulated vehicles. Okay, and that's when you go back to our flow charts of what is commercial motor vehicle, when do DOT rules apply. That's all stuff that you're going to want to make sure that you have. So again, I've included a copy of this flow chart. If you want the blank one that I didn't cram my little Front Range Compliance logo on there, hey, that's cool. Just shoot me an email and we'll get that sent out to you in Excel so you can manipulate it and use it. Right now, it's just converted to PDF, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody had a copy of that. Okay, it looks like I did have a comment come in. I'm trying to get it to open up here.
I can read it to you. How does the 14-hour work shift work if we're only allowed to work 60 hours per week? The 60 hours will be 5 days at 12 hours per day.
Absolutely. So you're going to have to, that's a great question, Jennifer. And, there's nothing saying that you have to work 14 hours. That's just the limit. So you've got to balance out your hours throughout the week so that you don't violate. Now, you can work 24/7, right? The DOT is going to only care if you drive, after either the 60 or the 70th hour. That's completely up to you. So for you, for the 60 hour, if they continue working, you're just going to have to be able to produce some type of evidence that they're working, but they did not drive. And again, that's where this time card is so important. So if we say, hey, this is a 7-day time card. So write down in this field, if this is Saturday and you say this individual was working, okay, but say they're at 68 hours on Friday, or wherever, you would want to make sure that your time card shows, or you have some type of evidence that shows that they're not driving after that time, and then you won't have a violation. If you don't have that, you're going to be fighting the DOT on that one. But again, you have to balance out your hours, so you might be still stuck with 12-hour shifts. And again, education with your drivers to make sure that they know that they're not driving beyond that 14-hour limit. Short haul is a tough mechanism. It made it a lot easier, but like I said, there's a lot of companies, like I've been into a lot of these outreach meetings and talked about hours of service, and I get companies that say you can't make any money at 60, 70 hours. That's the rule. It's always been the rule. So we just got to make sure that we're adhering to that the best we possibly can. Okay, it looks like I got a question, Jennifer. It says,
it's Jennifer again.
Yeah, I got it. So if the 60-hour per week is drive time, not work time. So, well, yeah, it would be a violation if I drive over 60. So, I think I misinterpreted your question. So yes, Jennifer, the entire work time, your entire work week is in fact going to be, all of the time worked, whether I'm driving or I'm not. You don't have to separate, drive time. If you don't qualify for short haul, then yes, you're going to have to either have an ELD or a paper log, depending if there's an exception that can get you into paper. but it will separate all of your times, but it still tracks your overall weekly hours for all time work. And one of the other things that kind of, can bite you in the hindquarters is secondary employment. You got to be tracking secondary employment. If an individual is doing Lyft, Uber, DoorDash, things like that, that time also is on duty time. So you have to have a system in place to be able to track that. Don't just think ignorance is bliss. If you got a driver that crashes for fatigue and it's found out by, say, Frank Azar and Associates that, that driver had secondary employment, they're going to be coming back and trying to pin that on you as a company, saying, hey, what did you do? How did you know? And that, again, goes back into your qualification and hiring documents, talking to them about secondary employment, so on and so forth. So Jennifer, hopefully that answered your question. And from there, we'll kind of rock on. Okay, the next big exception or hours of service change that we hit was going to be the adverse driving conditions. A big change to this one. I think it was really helpful. They went through and they added 2 hours, to the end of the day. Before, the adverse driving was specific to just, it just extended your drive day from 11 hours to 13. That's all you give. It was 2 extra hours to drive to get you either to a good safe haven or get you to the next available or to where you were going. That was going to be the previous rule. And this is again taken directly from the rule changes. I did provide the full document on this, so you can see all text. That'll be coming to y'all. Now, the new change that they did was they came through and they extended the 14-hour day. So that's going to be, pretty huge. They're going to exchange the 14 to 16. So now you get 2 additional hours of driving and 2 additional hours to extend the day if you have a short haul. Now, remember, document the adverse condition, okay? Because in an audit, they can come in and they can look at anything that went happen in the previous, 6 months. So we want to make sure that, you document what that was. And your ELD, if you claim short haul or adverse, make sure you document what that condition was. Now, the adverse condition can be changes in traffic conditions, again, that were unknown. One of the additional changes that they did to this was they updated the definition. So it's like, oh, they did something good, but they still went through and made it more restrictive. So previously, the adverse condition just said it was an adverse condition such as driving conditions, means snow, sleet, fog, or other adverse condition or highway covered in snow or ice, none of which were apparent at the basis of the information to the person dispatching the run at the time it began. Okay, so if you send somebody out on a 2 or 3 day trip, if you didn't know about a storm and the adverse condition hit, your driver could claim adverse. Okay, they updated it. Of course they did, due to technology that, we're all carrying around one of these little guys. We always know that information. It says they changed it to the same thing. The condition means any snow, sleet, or other adverse condition or unusual road or traffic conditions that were not known. There's a lot going on, especially here within state with those traffic conditions, with the traffic management and incident management due to the backups for crashes that happen. So again, that's going to create an unusual traffic flow. So because of some of that stuff, again, that creates, 2 or 3 hours of additional backup, but there's no crash. You can't see the crash because it's cleared, but it backed up cars. So again, you're going to have to document those unusual traffic conditions. Again, things that were unknown. And it says for a driver immediately prior to the beginning of the day or immediately before beginning driving after a qualifying rest break, okay, or sleeper berth period. So not just a change of duty status, but if they're coming in off of a rest break, they're just assuming the driver was on this thing and they got that information, or they're assuming that the motor carrier let them know. The other thing is the motor carrier immediately prior to documenting or dispatching that driver. So again, 2 big changes with that one. They extended both the days. It's overall a really good rule. The 30-minute rest break also changed with that one. With the 30-minute rest, it was always you had to take off-duty time, okay? And probably the easiest false log to find over the last several years has been a driver doing something else like fueling during their rest break, okay? Well, they killed that. It's done. Now, what they did with the update on the 30-minute rest break was they said you only have to take that rest break for every 8 hours of driving time, and they took out the word rest. It's just break. So it no longer requires you to go off duty, but for every 8 hours of driving, you have to take a 30-minute break. Now that's actually a good thing. I mean, put yourself in that driver's shoes. You're in that truck, you're just rolling 8 hours straight, and you don't stop and get out and walk around. Fatigue's going to happen, so you're just sitting there in that same position. So what they're saying is, if you've been in that truck for 8 hours, you need to plan a stop, pull over, get out, walk around, get some oxygen flowing, and you can utilize either off duty, sleeper berth, or on duty, not driving. Okay, I think that's the big one that everybody fell in love with, because now you can fuel your truck. Now you can go and work in the warehouse. It's any other activity. Plus, if you stop, you've got 30 minutes somewhere in the day of working activity. Then, again, at the end of that 30 minutes, you got another 8-hour period. So it's been, we're seeing a lot of the 30-minute violations, going away due to the update to this one. So I think it's very, very big. Now, remember that 30 minutes, it does have to be consecutive, all one time, but it's just a disruption of your driving activity. So perfect. Okay, sleeper berth provision. I'm going to hit this one just real quick. Not a lot of people have been using the short haul provision from the previous years, because again, it was just a nightmare. And it's been that taking them 15 years to clean this up. How are they doing on it? Unfortunately, I haven't got to review enough driver's logs that are claiming this to kind of see how it's going. In theory, it seems like it would work pretty well. So with this one, what the new change is number one, when you use the sleeper berth provision, that's using 2 times that are separated by work to create what's called the equivalent to 10 hours of rest. And those 2 periods, one of those periods now has to be at least 7 hours, okay, in the sleeper berth. So again, that's going to be one of those. The second one is going to be, you can have a separate period of at least 2 hours. Okay. But, again, we got to come up with 10 hours. So they wrote it in there that it has to be at least 2 hours. I don't know their thought process behind that. Honestly, if I got 7 hours here, I'm going to have 3 hours there. So it's got to be at least 3, right, to make that work. Of course, if this was 8 hours, okay, then of course 2 would still work. So you could still do the 8 and 2. So it doesn't have to be 3. So I think they just gave you an option on that, but at least 7 and another period of at least 3, that's going to make that come to the equivalent of 10. Now, the important thing is that 2 hours, it can be off duty, sleeper berth, combination of the 2, as long as it's a rest. And the 7 hours, absolutely, without a doubt, must be the sleeper berth. Okay. Now, other things have to happen. Both periods added together, it'll be at least 10 hours. I already talked about that. And it said when paired, neither time counts against the 14-hour window. So that's a big change too, because before, the only thing that counted against the 14 was the 8 hours in the sleeper berth. But now, when paired, when you're actually utilizing this, then that time that you use for rest doesn't count against the 14. So it allows you to extend the 14. So that's great for you guys. Okay, now down here, I just want to make a point. The 8-hour sleeper berth period by itself no longer is excluded from the 14. So we used to have, that was one of the things that would extend the 14. If a driver took 8 hours in the sleeper, then they could extend the 14. They didn't have to calculate that time into the 14. What this statement is saying right here, it says if you take that 7 to 8 hour period, then if it's not paired with another to actually get the provision, then it still counts against your 14. So definitely remember that. Okay, any questions when it comes to hours of service? Okay, I feel like I'm kind of speeding up on y'all. We got a little bit of time here, so let me throw a question that I had out there. So, well, where was I at here? Sorry, I got lost in my own questions. So, has the short haul, operation, has it been a productive regulatory change for your company and affected y'all in a positive manner? What are some of your thoughts on this new short haul operation? Go ahead and hit the reply in the comments. What I'm asking is the short haul provision, that update to the regulation, has it been a profound or productive, impact on your company? See if I can get the questions to open up. Sometimes they open up really easy, and other times, like right now, they just want to not cooperate with me. So Dennis Atencio is heck yeah. Yeah, I agree with you, Dennis. I think overall that new short haul has been really super beneficial, and taking out that 12-hour thing, that thing was always a killer of the short haul. So again, want to make sure, again, if you don't know, or if I've kind of left you in the dark on that short haul stuff, you can ask me some questions here at the end, and then we'll dive into it from there. Okay, let's talk about FMCSA audits, how COVID has changed the program. Now, hopefully y'all have not had to go through an actual audit. But here lately, the auditors have been busy. Like I said, we have had 6 of them just in the last just in March alone, and coming into April, we've been through 6 DOT audits, which is by far a record for us. We try to keep our clients out of them, but we had 3 brand new clients that came to us because they were getting an audit. So 2020, that was a massive disruption to the overall compliance programs, along with everything else, right? The world got turned upside down in 2020. But one of the unintended consequences was roadside enforcement also got sidelined. So those guys, everything got stopped. It was just traffic enforcement. If you've driven on any of the interstates, apparently there's some invisible speed limit signs that says, hey, 90 to 100 is the new normal for the speed limits, right? And it's not. Please don't go out there and speed and say, well, Ryan said that's the new normal. No, it is most definitely not the speed limit. But it used to be, if you were driving 80 miles an hour, you were right there with the traffic flow, or maybe a little bit faster than traffic flow. 80 miles an hour in a 75 mile an hour zone, of course. Nowadays, if you're doing 80 miles an hour, gosh, they're blowing your doors off. It's like, yeah, it's just insane out there. So we do have that going on. And because of some of this stuff, we also have, a rise in crashes, a rise in the numbers. Well, part of the FMCSA and the roadside inspectors, when they got sidelined about April, the numbers just dropped. Okay, and there's they started issuing these exceptions, and companies just went into full-fledged, we're just going to run, and no consequences. We're just going to run. We're going to take advantage. Now, if that was your company, you guys know who you are. Some companies still tried to stay pretty active, but for them overall, we saw a definite decline, in that, because there's no enforcement. They're not auditing us. Okay, but here's the deal. They still kept a scorecard. So if you got into crashes, if you happen to get into some roadside inspections, a year later in 2021, you're going to be answering to whatever went wrong in 2020. So for some companies, again, with what happened with the disregard of the disruption in safety, it really kind of meant that they were going to just kind of run and go for it. So compliance in COVID, the new normal, I absolutely hate that term, the new normal, but I think with DOT compliance, I think it changed how they're going to be doing things. And I don't see these new compliance procedures going away, because I think it's actually helping the enforcement to deal with more motor carriers. Some of these audits are very long because it's paperwork back and forth. So they've got 2 or 3 audits going at the same time, instead of just one, show up at the office, deal with it, close it out, file the paperwork. Now these officers have multiple audits going. So we'll kind of see what happens with it. So the roadside enforcement is back. They're back on the road. Violations and trends are absolutely on the climb, and at alarming rates. It's pretty shocking to see the out of service rates. The national average went up this month a little bit. So we're starting to see definitely some increases on that. And part of it is the officers were sidelined, and they talked. They're finding new violations. They had tons of training they went through. They tried to use that time to improve their process and different things. So when they're coming back, after being sidelined for a year, these guys are coming back, and they're coming back with a vengeance. So make sure that you're ready for them. Everything is getting ramped up, and they are being stricter than ever. Okay. Now, as we progress, we've got the different types of audits. First one's going to be the new entrant safety audit. If you're a brand new company, or if you're an older company but you have just changed that you're running across a state line, Okay, the new entrant safety audit. So starting in 2019, they got so behind in the safety audits that they kind of changed it, and they started doing the offsite upload the safety audits. And it's pretty simple. It really is a simplistic, fast-paced audit. It's just upload a couple copies, a copy of a medical card, a copy of an MVR, upload a copy of an annual inspection. The whole point of a safety audit is just to make sure that you have the information and that they can check it off the list that they told you so. So when they come back for the real audit, they can say, hey, on this date, we told you so. And you showed us, you told us that you had it. So if you're uploading a medical card, if you're uploading an MVR, the expectation is that you have those for everybody that it's required. So again, if you're just, if you cheat that program, it will come back and bite you. So be very, very careful with that. Now, the other audits, that we can run into would be the focused audits. Okay. So we have those. Not a lot has changed with the focused audits because, they're still doing sometimes focused on site. They're doing more and more. They're moving them more and more away from the on-site investigations due to COVID. Pretty much everything is an offsite investigation, and that can be a blessing or it can be a curse. It just kind of depends on how you're maintaining and managing your documents. So with this one, the investigation, as I said, it's the same as before, but basically what happens is when you go through a focus, the auditor's going to come in and they're going to take a snapshot of your overall program, even if they're just coming in, say, for your unsafe driving basic, or even if they're just coming in for, say, vehicle maintenance. When they come in, they're going to take a snapshot of your drug and alcohol testing program, your driver qualification program. They're not going to review a whole bunch of files, but they're going to just make sure that that is good. During a focused audit, the auditor does have the ability to expand into other categories if they see that you're not doing that, or if you're not organized, or if you're not maintaining that type of a program. So again, make sure that you do have that parts locked on. They're usually pretty good about it. They don't necessarily want to expand unless you're on their bad boy list, and then they're looking for a reason to expand. So it just kind of depends, and it's really important that you get off on the good foot, with that compliance auditor. We've had several instances, everybody gets the spam, all the texts, the emails, the messages. We've actually had several people that have called us and be like, yeah, this didn't start well because, the auditor called me 3 or 4 times and I told him to go fly a kite in not some nice terms. And it gets pretty ugly. But after, we get everybody calmed down, we all kind of laugh it off. But again, one of those things, you want to get your audit off on the right foot, and you want to be 100% cooperative with that. Okay. Now, the comprehensive investigation. This one is the big one that changed. Comprehensive offsite. So a comprehensive investigation, that's that investigation that is full blown. Okay. That's the one that they're looking at everything. It usually entails that they're going to be doing some inspections. Now, one of the big things with the roadside inspections, one of the biggest changes, and it makes a lot of sense if you look at it from the enforcement side. Okay. And because of my past, I kind of can see the objective of both the compliance from the industry and the compliance from the enforcement side in that part of the development. But what they're doing now is if they're going to be doing roadside inspections, a lot of the officers aren't letting you know. And that's part of the reason, one of the things that is a big trigger for us. We'll get a phone call and say, Ryan, what's going on, man? They've stopped like 4 or 5 of our trucks in the last couple of days. I'll be like, oh, they're going to be calling you. Okay. That's one of the things that the officers are doing is they know they're coming into a company. They will go out and seek out your vehicles in the field, and they'll hit them with like 4 to 5 to 6, depending how big you are, actual current roadside inspections. Okay. They're looking for your out of service rate. They're going to base your out of service rate on those roadside inspections, not on what you have in the safety measurement system for the last 2 years. So you want to make sure, again, you got to be prepared. A lot of times in the past, what it was is they would show up on day 1 of the audit. They'd be like, okay, we're going to do some inspections. I want to see this vehicle and this vehicle. We're going to inspect a total of 5. You go ahead and pick the other 3. And then you're like, oh, perfect. We're going to get the best vehicles for you. But now, like I said, with this new introduction of kind of how they're doing it, they're hitting you in the field. Now, that doesn't mean every audit's going to be that way. It depends on the auditor, okay? All right. So the next thing we have with that offsite, the investigation is the same, okay, but the process is different because it's all sent, documents back and forth. Every document the investigator requests, you're going to have a timeline, and it's going to have to be uploaded or sent to them electronically. For some of you, that's going to be super easy. For others, it's going to be an absolute nightmare. Okay. There will be added documents after you send the initial documents. They're going to come back and they're going to request other documents from you, and then they're going to give you a timeline to go through and get those documents uploaded. Typically, these audits go through, they take 1 to 3 weeks. We had one that closed out yesterday that was over a month. I had completely forgotten about it. One of my staff members called me and said, hey, they went ahead and closed out that audit. I was like, holy cow, they just now closed it out. So it just kind of depends on, how long it takes to get documents and how long that communication takes between you and the enforcement officer. Okay. So part of this is making sure that you're good and ready for it. Now, comprehensive on-sites, those are still taking place. One of the biggest changes again is still, they're going to do those in roadsides. They're going to be stopping your trucks. Now they could come in and they could do them at your shop, but more than likely you're going to see that they're going to stop your trucks out there, in the roadway. Now they could do it beforehand or they could do it after. We had an audit last week where the officer came in. He said, did the audit, and he says, okay, be prepared sometime in the next week or two. You're probably going to be getting some roadside inspections. So it's like, hey, we appreciate the heads up, but we'd like to know what vehicles you're going to inspect. So again, that's the game they play. So you want to make sure that you're ready because they could stop any of your active trucks that you put out there on the road. I think it's kind of stressful because now it's going to hit. Which one are they going to get? So again, be ready for that. So when they come in for the audit, the investigator can demand basically that they want to do it on site instead of an off-site. Now, typically they only do the the on-site comprehensive now if they think you as a motor carrier or somebody's going to be trying to cheat through the system. If you are really bad out of whack and they think you're pencil whipping things, they can demand to be on site. So, like I said, if they're coming in, it could also just be the officer's discretion. I've got some of the guys that just don't like doing off-site. They don't like getting the multitude of documents and trying to keep track of everything from doing multiple companies at one time. So again, it just kind of could depend on the officer that you're working with. Okay. So record keeping, D.O.T files and record keeping, file organization, how do you maintain your files? How does that look? Are you like this person here where you've just got a sea of paperwork everywhere? And yes, this isn't over exaggeration, but hey, y'all have seen those offices where you just got piles and stacks everywhere, or maybe you've been in that position. And once they stack up, it just seems like it's never going to end. So that's always, of course, one option. It like I said, it never seems to end. Or are you that company that is utilizing some type of electrical file system, where you're good and organized and you've got them? So in this example, you see we've got the foundation principle of all the D.O.T file systems. We've got the active drivers, and then we have a list of inactive drivers, just to kind of show you that, or archive drivers. Remember, you have to maintain those records for 2 years. Okay, so I'm going to run through just to kind of show you some file managements. We're going to use driver qualification. Let me check my time here for a minute. We'll kind of run through this. So under the driver's qualification, what we're running into with this one, is you can have the paper file or you can have an electronic file. So I'm just going to kind of run through what you have. It's just a quick run through. I'm not going to talk about each of these topics too in depth, but some of the stuff that's going on, with them and certain violations that we have. The reason I'm using the driver qualification is because it has a multitude of different documents, and storing electronic files is absolutely critical in these days. If you're still doing paper files, that is fine, but it is 2021. You're allowed to have, electronic files. So, I'm not going to beat you up too bad. I got a lot of every company we set up electronic files, but the majority of them are all like, nope, we want our paper files. And I'm, okay. So if you do paper files, please make sure that they are organized, okay? Chronological. You've got all the documents grouped together. It's really annoying when you do an audit on a company and you have to organize their file, okay? All right, so things that we have to have. Number one, a driver's qualification file. If you've been through my files management class, you'll know I teach a 4-file process. Are there other ways of doing this? 100%, absolutely. So with that, we've got a driver's qualification file. Okay, the next thing that we've got is going to be the confidential drug and alcohol and a confidential safety performance and then human resources file. Okay, HR, we want them to have their own file. That's where your garnishments are going to go in. That's where W-2, vacation requests, employee write-ups for non-safety stuff. We don't want that in the driver's qualification file. Now, one of the questions I get is says, hey, Ryan, can't these three documents or files be all combined? Yeah, absolutely. There's multiple ways to do this. It's just that, drug and alcohol information, the only person that's allowed to have access to that is the DER. If the DER is not the same person that's managing the driver qualification file, then you have to have two separate files, or you're going to have to train and maintain whoever's doing the drug and alcohol and whoever's doing this. They're going to have to become the associate DER so that they can have those documents, and then the files also have to be locked up and that kind of thing. So again, 4-file system. Now, as we kind of get through this system, we run into the driver's qualification file. The first thing you absolutely have to have in there is that employment application. Okay, so we call it the DQ packet. Sometimes we save it as DQP. We keep those forms together on everybody. There's really no need to separate those out when we do the electronic files. Of course, you can if you want to go through and do that. Now, a driver's qualification file, like the application for employment, number one, it says driver application for employment, but it is different than just an employment application, and it's not an appropriate application to use if you're hiring somebody that's not going to be driving for you. So again, make sure that you have the correct document. Okay, the next thing is you want to always have a copy of their driver's license, whether it's a regular driver's license or a commercial driver's license. And yes, as they expire, get a copy of the new one and put it in the file. MVRs, you have got to have a copy of your MVR in the file. And no, the insurance company does not run your MVRs for you. Okay. Now, me personally, I don't care where you get your MVRs from. If you get them from me, you get them from the state, you get them from another third party, you get them from your insurance. I don't care. But what happens is, and this trend, I noticed it, 20 years ago when I was walking into companies and doing DOT audits, it's like, hey, let's look at your MVRs. Oh, I don't have my insurance runs my MVRs. Yeah, no, they don't. Okay. I have never had an insurance company in 20 years that supposedly was running them. When you call them up and say, hey, can I get a copy of them? You get them. If you don't have a copy of them, I can almost promise you 99.9% of the time, they don't exist. The insurance has a system where they can run that driver, and it tells them, hey, it gives them a score saying, hey, what's their record like? Are they insurable or are they not insurable? That's not an MVR. Okay. Another thing that's not an MVR is when you go to the state of Colorado and you just run that driver's history, that 7-year history, that is not an MVR. You have to actually have a copy of the motor vehicle record. So it looks like a question popped up there. Come on. All right, Allison, I can't get it to open. You're going to have to tell me what that is.
It's the driver qualification file for CDL drivers only or all CMV drivers.
Perfect. That's a great question. And it's for all drivers, all regulated drivers. So when you go back to my flow charts, I'm just going to escape out of this really quick. Maybe. No, it's not going to let me. But when you get my flow charts, it says, hey, Interstate and Colorado DOT, it goes down and it says, hey, when is, DOT rules apply? 10,001 for interstate and 16,001 a vehicle either by itself or in combination. 16,001 for Colorado. You have to have DOT compliance for it. So you have to have everything for a non-CDL driver of those types of vehicles that you have to for a CDL driver. Okay, it's just one of the other exceptions is you don't have to have a medical card if they're Colorado only. But if a non-CDL person takes that same regulated vehicle across the state line, they have to have medical cards. And I guarantee you this, like if you go up to Wyoming, those state troopers, they know these green plates, or if it's a red like fleet vehicle, yeah, they know that there's going to be a medical card violation. So they're going to pull you over if you're non-CDL because you do have to have that medical card. So great question. Okay, kind of coming down through here. So the initial, when do we have to do MBRs? We have to do the initial MBR when we first hire them. Okay, it's got to be dated with at least 30 days. Now, don't misinterpret that. A lot of people think, oh, I hire that driver, I've got 30 days to run an MBR. Now, you probably ought to run that first to make sure that that license is in good status before you put them in the vehicle. The intent of this rule means that if you have a driver or somebody brings in their MBR, it can't be more than 30 days old. Or you can, if you ran one, and then your hiring process took a bunch of time before you actually put them in a truck, you have to have a current MVR. Okay. You also have to have an annual MVR. That's going to be run, of course, annually. I would recommend, I call it MVR day, and usually that's going to be like the 15th of the month. And you go through on the first Monday of that month, you have a training day. You have the drivers fill out their confessional forms, which is their annual list of violations and convictions they had. You get that back, you run the MVR on the 15th, and then you can do the annual review. So again, once a year. Okay. The other thing you have to do is you got to rerun that MVR every time that CDL driver renews their medical. Again, now that one's just applicable to CDL, but you got to run MVR and have this file on every regulated driver, CDL and non-CDL. Okay. And again, that medical certificate, and when a CDL driver's license gets renewed, okay, you have to run a license or an MVR within 30 days to make sure that that new medical card is attached to their driving record. Now, the interpretation from the FMCSA and the state enforcement, they say a SIDless. Okay, the only way we can get SIDless is, of course, and SIDless is CDL information systems. The only way we can get that SIDless information is through the MVR where the medical card is printed on that. So you make sure that you're running the correct MVR that shows the medical stuff. Okay, additional things we have to have on there is road test or equivalent. Yes, there's an exception that says we don't have to run a road test. Not a fan. I'll tell you, I'm not a fan at all. Okay. I just see too many bad drivers. They hold up that license. That does not mean that they truly know how to drive. So again, make sure, okay, if they're driving for you, make sure you're doing a road test. A lot of guys lie on their application. They really don't have good experience. You need to do it. But if you're taking the exception, yeah, you can. The equivalent is you need to have a copy of their license with them, okay, an actual copy of that license. Now, let's go through and talk about a couple things. There's a couple points that you need to know. For this term equivalent, it's only for CDL. So if they're non-CDL drivers, it does not apply. Every non-CDL driver has to have a road test in the type of vehicle they were at. I did a compliance audit someday, and this is actually CDL drivers, because let me before I tell you the story, we had the other exception we have is cargo tanks. If they're driving cargo tanks, they have to have a road test. And if they're longer vehicle combinations, they have to have the road test. So it does still apply to those situations, okay? And it needs to be, a road test needs to be in the type of vehicle that they're going to be driving for you. Okay, I was doing an audit on a cargo tank company one time, hazmat cargo tanks. And their road test was in a Chevy S10 pickup. It's like, yep, we did a road test on them. I'm like, no, you gotta be in an actual cargo tank. We're making sure you know how to drive, and deal with that cargo tank. If you're longer combination vehicle, it needs to be that. If you're non-CDL, okay, you have to have a road test in the truck and trailer that you're operating in. Yes, absolutely, without a doubt, you need to do that. Okay, the annual list of violations, we've got that here. That is a super important one. Again, we want to make sure that you're doing those annual lists and the annual reviews. Please, when you're doing these, make sure that this annual review is not dated before the MVR. Okay, if you do that, they're just going to know you're pencil whipping and it's total BS. When you do the annual review, it's after the driver did their list and certified to you their violations, and after you ran the MVR, and then you went during the review, you're comparing. There's probably a couple regulations. You should write this down. 383.51. That is going to be the CDL reasons for a suspension, cancellation, denied. Or you got 391.15, again, other reasons that licenses can be suspended, canceled, denied, and create a disqualified driver. So again, you want to make sure that you're having one of those, you're comparing the violations with those two regulations so that you can have that conversation, such as if he gets a ticket for following too closely, you need to sit him down and say, hey, by the way, if you get another citation that's listed in this regulation in the next 3 years, you're going to be suspended for 60 days. That's the whole purpose of doing that annual review. Okay. All right. Medical cards. As we go through, we talk about medical cards. Okay. Again, the medical card, we want to make sure that we have the long form and we have the overall certificate. The certificate. Now, do you have to have the long form? No, you don't. But with CDL drivers, it's kind of coming in to since the 2018-2019 change. It's pretty important that you do have the long form, because it's possible that a drug test can come back negative with a substance present. Okay, and if you have that happen, that means the test is negative. Say the driver came back for amphetamines, negative for amphetamines, which is weird to say, but because they have a legal prescription. Well, you've got to now go back to the medical or the driver qualification file, pull up their last medical certificate to see if they got cleared to drive with that drug. And if all you've got is a medical certificate, you're not going to know. If you have the long form on page 1 down at the bottom, that's where the driver lists out their prescriptions that they're on. So you have to open that up, see if that driver has that script listed on there. If they don't have anything, they have to go in and get re-qualified, okay, for the to show that that drug has been declared. Then the medical examiner is going to say yes or no if they're allowed to drive with that. So we're seeing drivers, they can get passed by the medical examiner, for the amphetamines, something like Adderall or that. But we got a lot of drivers that, if they get put on some type of narcotic, for long-term use, they get disqualified. Now, if it's just short-term use, then you're just going to have that driver hit the sidelines, while they're on, say, Vicodin or, any of those opiates or opioids, I should say. Okay. So we want to make sure now that you are gathering a long form. I think I saw a couple questions pop in, Allison.
Yep, and it was related to the road test. Who can administer the road test, and does it have to be a third-party certified tester?
Perfect. No, well, it doesn't have to be a third party, that kind of thing, but it is one of those things is it's got to be administered by a competent person. Is exactly how 391.33 describes that, a competent person. So, who is a competent person within your company? That's for you to decide. And the road test, the whole gavel of that road test has to be, done out there, from a pre-trip to a planned route, and then the forms filled out. And I do have a pretty good video on road test on D.O.T. on that YouTube channel. I would recommend, you can use that to say, hey, we've done internal training on road test. That video is designed not just to give you a good idea, but I put that out on the D.O.T. University, so companies, such as yourself or anybody else watching this, can go and they can review that, and it would tell them how to do that process within. But again, it's got to be by a competent person. Who's competent? That's going to be a person that's licensed and has experience driving the type of vehicle, or has the proper endorsements for the type of vehicle that they're being tested in. So yeah, it does need to be competent. I would definitely assign that role within your company. It could be a senior driver, and it could be a manager. Just again, make sure that they know those procedures and they're filling out the forms correctly. So really great question. And then did I have a second question there? I got it working again. Is a driver qualification CDL driver who can administer the road test? Okay, I think we are good with those. Okay, moving on here. So CDL drivers, again, that's got to be filed with the state. Remember the new Colorado Department of Revenue site. I think it's Colorado MyDMV something. I forget. It's one of those things that I always go to Google Colorado MyDMV and it pops up. So again, go there. When you get to the MyDMV page for the state of Colorado, it's really cool. It's got driver services, it's got vehicle service. That's where you do your IRP setups and renewals, things like that. But under driver services, when you open up that bar, that box for driver services, down in the lower right hand corner, you're going to see upload a medical document, upload a medical card. So it's a really nice feature. You do get a confirmation they have it. That doesn't mean that it's proof that it's in there. Remember, you still have to run the MVR within that 15 days to show that the proper medical card has in fact been uploaded on that record. Everybody's getting a lot better on that, about that. I don't want to just harp on that too much, but again, you want to file those MVRs with the states. The non-CDL drivers, not required for Colorado for your medical cards. So non-CDL within Colorado, no medical cards. Okay. However, interstate, meaning you cross that state line or you carry a continuance of an interstate load. For instance, the FedEx truck that you see out your window that's driving around the neighborhood, that driver has a medical card, even though they're just staying within your driver's license, or even though they're just staying within your neighborhood. Okay, that driver still has the medical card because the packages started outside the state and they originate within the state. So it's still an interstate load, even though they're not crossing the state line. So you do want to make sure that your non-CDL folks that are running across the state line or carrying an interstate load have a DOT medical card. Okay. The next thing that we've got going on with this is the verification medical examiner. Okay, you do still want to verify the medical examiner that the driver goes into, and to show that they're in good standing, with the FMCSA or that they've been qualified. We don't see too many violations of that, but we still do see a lot of companies that aren't verifying through the website. All righty, so as we're kind of going through, that's just a layout of a driver's qualification file. And if you're not building e-files, you're behind the program. You really got to consider switching over, now more than ever, because audits are electronic. Okay. And the rules on electronic documents is as long as you can produce a photocopy of the original, you're good. All documents throughout your entire program can be electronic. And I showed you an example of what a filing system could look like. Now, there is a lot of electronic systems out there, telematic systems that are offering, to do all that. That's great, but I mean, you could do it yourself really simply how I set up. And I'm going to show you now how you can kind of lay that foundation if you want to do it yourself. Remember, data in equals data out, no matter how you're doing your program. So if you're not documenting things right, if you're not naming things right, it's going to be a real nightmare. So having everything electronic is definitely going to help you. Some optional scanners that I do recommend, okay, are down here on the bottom. These ScanSnaps Fujitsus, okay, they are a lifesaver. I bought my first one, right when I started my business because we had them at the State Patrol. They're a lifesaver, okay. Flatbed scanners, if you've got that copy machine that's got the flatbed on it, scanning thousands of documents is going to take you thousands of hours because they are slow. These ScanSnap things, these scanners, they move very fast. They capture both the front and back. If you haven't used one, you need to, okay? It's going to help you be more efficient at what you got going on. So check them out. All right, organizational files. Number one, if you're getting ready to go electronic, plan your documents, plan your file layout so that you know what's going on, because you want to be consistent within your whole program. Because if you just kind of start making everything electronic and you don't have a good plan, then you're going to have a mess. Plan your file names. Okay, I had a company. I went out to Oklahoma, spent a couple weeks with a company out in Oklahoma. They had everything electronic. The only problem was they were using like a big copy machine, and it had the scanner, and then it would send over to them, and they just saved every document by the file name that the copy machine used. So, by the time I got there, she had like 200,000 electronic documents in this system, but every one of them was just named copy machine. So when I was like, okay, where's the copy of this driver's license? We're clicking through 200,000 documents. I was like, oh, no, scrap that file, delete it all. We have to start over. And she just sat there for 2 weeks, still trying to sort the whole program as we were building our compliance program. Make sure you come up with a good file name, plan how you want to do that. I'm going to give you some ideas here in just a little bit. Invest in a decent scanner. I already mentioned that. Those desktop scanners they're awesome. They don't take up a lot of space and they're efficient. I mean, if you're going back and forth, when you're scanning thousands of documents, that's a lot of time back and forth to the copy machine to get those sent back to you, efficiently, a couple $100, you can put one of those scanners on your desk and it's going to work really quick. and stay away from, again, those flatbed scanners. They're slow. I don't have the patience to sit there and we'll let it scan 1 page a minute, that kind of thing. Okay. So make sure you capture both the front and back, especially like driver's license and that type of things. Okay. So your basic foundation principle, this slide, a lot going on. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time of it, but this slide is your foundation principle of all DOT programs, whether it's a paper files or electronic files, things that you need to have. An FMCSA file, so you're going to maintain all of your correspondence to the FMCSA. Your accident file, that's anything associated with your commercial motor vehicle accidents, your accident files, your register, photographs, things like that. Your insurance, not a big file, but it amazes me how many companies have absolutely no idea where their MCS 90 is, okay? Probably ought to keep that in a specific file since it's a critical violation if you can't find it, okay? Driver qualifications, that's a big one. Drug and alcohol testing program, okay? It's okay, I'm cool, especially electronic, putting the well, again, I guess I got to back up on that statement. I'm okay with the drug and alcohol being in the driver qualification file as long as it's controlled access and only the DER has access to it. If it's an electronic file with drug and alcohol for the driver and you're not the DER, then it needs to be partitioned into a separate folder, electronic folder that can only be accessed by the DER. So let me back that up. The next thing that we have with the drug and alcohol, we have the hours of service, vehicle maintenance full program, hazardous materials. Okay, that again, within the hazardous material operation, those files can get pretty expansive. Your policies, procedures, and of course, training programs. Now, of course, I'm going to say every driver and driver qualification is going to need a training file, but that's going to be the training that they go through. Okay, in your training file, you're going to actually have your trainings, things that you've put in there, copies of your trainings that you've attended, things like that. Anybody can put forth a document that says, hey, so-and-so got trained, but you got to support. What was the training? Was it adequate? Was it efficient? Did it do its job? Did it address the topics that you needed to? And that's what your training file is going to look like. So when I go through and I break this down in a file structure format, okay, this is super important. You would go through and if these were files, okay, so these bullet points are going to be the file extensions. First off, I would have a driver's qualification. That's going to be a file. And then inside that file, I'm going to have the driver names. Maybe, we'll have a whole bunch of those names, okay? But then from there, I open up the individual driver's name based on their name or however you want to save that. You could also use employee numbers. Driver's name's a little easier, but again, we go through this. Now we have the documents that are saved within that. Not a fan of having more files past there. I've had, companies call me up and said, okay, we want you to come in and look at it. We made everything electronic and they have more files. Like each medical card gets its own file. Each, form gets its own file. No, save your files all under that driver's name. Your computer system will automatically sort those how you file name them. Okay. Now this is where it also gets really important. You want to use file names that are easy to find. Be consistent with it because, if you've got 1 or 2 drivers, this is easy. But if you got hundreds of drivers or even 10, 20, 50, 60, whatever, it becomes a lot more difficult and it's expansive with the number of documents. If you do it the same way every time, that means searching for a medical card, searching for somebody. If you wanted to speed up the process instead of going through the files, you can just type in your search and you can type in med cards, Ryan Byers, and it'll pull up all my med cards right there for you. So it's really super slick. Okay. So in there, we do DQF. That's the DQ file. Maybe we might save it as like DQP. Now within that specific file, again, you don't have to go through and separate all those forms. You can, but it's going to be super easy for the auditor if they're all together and they're all set up the exact same way, because then they can just flip through it and they can see where they're at. That's, again, just the initial hiring documents. Okay. Not the expansive years of stuff. So that's going to be the initial driver qualification file. One benefit, maybe separating the history, which you sure could do. But how I'm going to go through and I'm going to save the DQ file in that driver's file. I'm just going to put DQ first, followed by the driver's name and the date that the DQ file was filled out. And then that'll be a PDF file. Okay, I see a lot of people do the driver's name first. The only problem with doing driver's name first, when I open up that driver's file, it tends to shorten out and I can't see the whole file name. And all I'll see is driver name, driver name, driver name. Okay. If I put the name of the document first, then it'll sort them by those documents and they'll all be grouped together other than grouped by driver name. So always start off with an abbreviation of what your document is. have a copy of their CDL or their driver's license, copy again, front and back. I will put in there CDL-A, meaning they have a commercial driver's license, class A. If it was a B, I would use CDL-B, that kind of thing, driver name. And then with that one, I put EXP and the date. And then those are all saved in there. So through the years, if they renew every 4 years, I'll have those licenses there. Okay. And it's easy to purge out old documents, because remember, the annual and the additional documents you add, you can purge those after they've been in there for 3 years. Okay, MVRs. Okay, we're going to run an MVR. Again, MVR, driver's name, date, PDF. Y'all are going to get a copy of this. I'm not going to go down through the rest of this. You see where I'm going with this. Again, electronic names, plan how you're going to go through and do this. It's super, super easy. Once you get the hang of it, it's a breeze. Like you don't need to invest in any fancy, maintenance or software tracking for this kind of stuff. Your basic computer files are set up to do this. You might have to, again, partition them so that they're not all set up for everybody in the company to be able to pull up those records, but you can do your file naming structures. Okay, I want to just give you an example of a vehicle maintenance, kind of how we would do that same thing. It's kind of the same thing. We're going to, instead of driver qualifications, I'm going to have a vehicle maintenance file, and then I'll have all of my vehicles layered down between that, where it's got the vehicle unit number and the file. And then from there, I will save those documents in that unit number file. So if I got unit number A1, okay, that's going to be, everything's going to be saved within that area. So how I would do that, like the annual inspection, I would put an INSP, unit number, and then the date that was done. Okay. And so we're going to have those. You got to keep those for 14 months. So I'm going to usually have 2 or 3 of them always in the file. Okay. DVIR. Okay. With the 2014 change to the DVIRs. Okay. If you have one that's got some violations on it, you're going to want to keep that to show that, hey, we've got this problem set up, because again, the only ones you're required to maintain in DVIRs are the documents that have violations on them. So if you're doing that, if you say you're saving them every day to an enforcement auditor, they're going to want to look at them every day. But if you just say, hey, we only maintain the DVIRs with defects, you're going to want to have proof that your program's going well. You're going to save that. Now, if you're doing electronic DVIRs, like through your telematics system, that's cool. You just got to make sure that it's working and you're following the process. So remember, the DVIR regulations in 396.11 and 13 is not written for electronic DVIR. So it's going to be your responsibility to make sure that program is working correctly. Okay. Preventative maintenance inspection, PM, unit, and date, repairs. Okay. That's going to be the receipt, just to show that you saved that. Repair order, I would just put repair. Okay. And then don't forget, you got to save your inspector qualifications, and then your roadside inspections. Make sure you're saving those. I just put INSP and we save those. They're going to be in their own file, which is why I backed this out. I'm going to have a file just for roadside inspections. If it's a maintenance roadside inspection, I might put M inspection for maintenance. If it was a driver violations, I might put D inspection. However you want to do. Again, as long as you're the exact same way every time, then you can pop through that. Now imagine going into a D.O.T audit, having all this stuff really organized like that. You're able to just share it and get that stuff uploaded, to the FMCSA right away. All right, where are we at for time? 10:20. Man, look at that. Right on the nose here. We're good to go. Let me check this question that I've got going on.
We have one.
Absolutely. So Jennifer has asked, how long do you need to keep DVIRs for? Great question, Jennifer. Okay, by the letter of the law, you only have to keep them for 90 days. So, it used to be with the DVIR process, the way that was, companies were literally standing by the shredder, just waiting to get rid of those old DVIRs. With this new process, because how it works now is with a DVIR, if a driver writes something down, it's got to be repaired. That comes into the shop makes the repair that's on there. They sign it, they turn it in. You can just staple that DVIR that shows, hey, look, driver identified, we corrected it, staple it to it. There's not a mad rush to get rid of something to show that you did something well. So DVIRs is 90 days. So again, like I said, make sure that you're maintaining at least for 90 days. Perfect. All right. Any other questions? And I will open it up, to either live voice questions, or if we can do that, I'm not sure. That's up to Allison, or you could type in whatever type of question that you want to go with. with there. While we're waiting for more questions to come in, thank you guys from Front Range Compliances. It's the name of my company. The link to the D.O.T. University, again, free videos and free training. Now, don't judge me because I only have, so many subscribers. It's just something that we started the last few months. So, I haven't been at it for years. We are getting a lot of good comments on there, and it's good training. So, check that stuff out. You can also check out our new website at frontrangeCompliance.com. Shows our programs and that kind of thing. If you do have questions, you want to reach out to me separately, info@frontrangeCompliance.com, or you can reach out to these phone numbers here, the 970-646-1050. That will reach my absolutely outstanding Director of Compliance Programs, Nicole Hall, or you can reach me at 720-951-1184. All right, if I don't have any other questions that are popping up on this, I will turn it over to you, Allison.